We've all heard of the gleaming city of New Atlantis, the dark pleasure city of Neon, the innocuous Hope Town, and who could forget the muddy streets of Aquila City? Even ruined cities, such as the terramorph-stricken settlement of Londinium, or the completely erased colony of Vesta from the Colony War, are well known to us spacefarers and others in these settled systems. Yet during all of our travels, a city even less talked about than the Mars colony of Sidonia in the backwater of the United Colonies exists. We are of course talking about the mining settlement of Gagarin Landing on the planet of Gagarin in the Alpha Centauri system. In this brief lore video, we'll be going over the history of Gagarin Landing, how it came to be, and what exactly is going on with this city that's now on an apparent rebound in the 2330s. Just a heads up that there will be spoilers in this lore video. This will most likely be the last Starfield lore video we'll do until the Shattered Space DLC comes out sometime in 2024. In the meantime, we'll be swinging our focus on other aspects of Starfield and exploring the lore of other games, so definitely subscribe if you've been enjoying the content from me this late year. If you want to catch up on the other lore videos, you can watch it on the channel, and if you want to know even more about Starfield, do check out my partner, StarfieldWiki.net, run by the team behind UESP. Surprisingly, despite being in the same star system as Jemison's New Atlantis, the nerve center of the United Colonies, Gagarin Landing is never brought up by almost everyone we can meet in the settled systems. While Sidonia on Mars is often referred to as a backwater settlement or in the middle of nowhere in terms of cultural or political influence, at least it's mentioned often by members of Constellation and United Colonies officials. Despite its status as an undesired post, Sidonia still holds importance as a mining settlement that plays a role in the manufacturing of starships, most notably at the Deimos Star Yard. Perhaps the biggest and only reason why we spacefarers visit Gagarin Landing is when we need to assist Amundsen Barrett in confronting his tormented past in which his husband and Constellation member, Irvin Madani, died. The planet of Gagarin itself is a planet with a high oxygen atmosphere, with a moderate diversity of both fauna and flora, living in a temperate climate. The fauna, especially on Gagarin, is something quite special, as we'll see later. Gagarin and its settlement are presumably both named after Yuri Gagarin, the Soviet cosmonaut who was the first human in our species' history to journey into outer space and complete a full orbit of our home planet of Earth. Indeed, the Liberty Square monument smack dab in the middle may also be referring to both Gagarin and the early astronauts of humanity, with it saying, "This monument is dedicated to the many intrepid explorers who risked their lives so that humanity could one day find a home among the stars." Upon touching down in Gagarin Landing, we immediately notice that the settlement is quite industrial in terms of its architectural layout. The settlement feels like it's a skeleton of a city. It has what would one see as necessary facilities, such as a medical clinic, a Reliant Medical, a general goods store, a town hall, and even a few apartment complexes. But much of the settlement is consolidated too densely with the mines, factories, a bar, and guard stations being stacked on top of one another. While certainly not as impoverished as Epside and Neon or The Well in New Atlantis, it's hard to miss that the people and the economy have obviously seen better times. Clint, the proprietor of Clint's Collectibles, has this to say about the settlement when we meet him for the first time.
Gagarin. It was a military town until the end of the Colony War. Mechs were our specialty. Everyone always blabbers about Mars making the highest performance machines. But if you needed a system that wouldn't let you down in a pinch, you piloted a Gagarin. But that all dried up when the mechs were banned with the armistice. Now, we've got these new firms coming in. Arkmite, Centauri Mills, claim they're here to revitalize the city. Which is funny, since their employees refuse to step foot in most of it. Bloody pieces in here. Just plenty more competition for stores like mine, that's for sure. UC had a lot more money to throw around in those days. During the war, I couldn't keep the shelves stocked. At first, because of all the demand. But later, because the Freestar Collective flotillas were so damn good at picking off UC merchant craft. But the biggest difference now? The quiet. Not just because most of the forges and mines shut down. It was the testing. Firms used to drive their prototype mechs out into the canyons, way beyond the city. But you could still hear the guns all the way from here. It was like, shoo, thunder. So when the thunder stopped, well, so did Gagarin in a way.
The irrelevancy of Gagarin landing now makes much more sense given the context added by Clint. At the end of the Colony War, the three major factions of the Settled Systems, the United Colonies, the Freestar Collective, and House of Varun, signed and enacted the Armistice, which banned and locked away the research and development of devastating technologies such as xenowarfare, sentient artificial intelligence, and mechs. With the banning of the war machines entirely, Gagarin landing, with its only export being mechs, was bound to suffer greatly economically. With the mech factory shut down, the people of Gagarin Landing had very few choices. Some continued to work in the dying mines of Gagarin, others left for New Atlantis, and a few others, as evident by the UC Vanguard recruitment campaign we can choose to help with, have turned to military service as a career path. Without surprise, it's implied by the denizens of the settlement and Lizzie the hub owner that there are illicit or just extremely dangerous activities taking place under the nose of UC security for people to survive. With Lizzie in particular, we can actually choose to help her salvage a rare, expensive box set of Bogdanov's boutique liquor from a derelict ship plagued by Crimson Fleet pirates. When we return to Lizzie, we can convince her to part with almost 16,000 credits, which is suspiciously quite large for such a small business like hers to dispense to us. A rather foreboding sign, which we'll explore later in this video, presents itself when we visit Gagarin Landing for the first time. Interestingly, we can overhear an argument between Chief Pretorius of the Settlement Security, Bonifac Maximov of Reliant Medical, Lawan Arison of Arkmite about how the civilians living here aren't really reciprocating in return for the corporation's generous investment efforts into reviving the economy of Gagarin's Landing. As we poke around in Gagarin Landing, Barrett explains that his husband, Irvin, took a contract with the Hephaestus Mining Corporation 20 years ago, and that one of the messages Irvin had sent to Barrett before he was caught in a space crossfire between the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective turned out to be encrypted. In all of his grief, Barrett overlooked the encrypted message as just being static noise, but it turns out that during the Colony War, the Hephaestus Mining Company was eager to drill deep into Gagarin for profit. Irvin was somehow blamed for catastrophic economic and ecological issues that occurred on Gagarin. When we start investigating, it's clear that heads and eyes turned away from the obvious corruption of the Hephaestus Mining Company, as the contributions from its projects were net positive for the United Colonies during the Colony War against the Freestar Collective. Despite gathering sufficient enough evidence to dispute the court ruling, which also involved bribery and coercion from Hephaestus Mining Company, we're told by lawyer Ellie Yankton, who had taken Irvin as her first client long ago, that we need even more evidence which indicates the power and the influence of the entities involved in covering up what really happened. And of course, what really happened was while Irvin Madani did find out a way to kill Gagarin's apex predators, which were disrupting excavation sites, he and his colleague Helgi Hoxson discovered that microbial colony networks in the soil of Gagarin were being poisoned by the mining chemicals. We ventured deeper into Hephaestus Mining Company's site that was also hidden from the public records where Irvin and Helgi worked. After fighting through the indigenous predators of Gagarin that now populate the site, we come across a compilation of reports filed by Helgi Hoxson, who says, if a local queen or gyne in the regional hive of the apex predators dies, one of the drones is promoted to queen by consuming the remains of the previous queen. The process of promotion takes several months. Below the surface of Gagarin exists a vast microbial colony network that spans much of the planet. These colonies contain many species of microbes working together to convert dust and organic material into soil. Without these colonies, Gagarin's entire ecosystem would be devastated. The apex predator species is an important component of the Gagarin ecosystem. The species is eusocial and has a strict caste structure with drones, defenders, and a primary reproductive gyne, or queen. The gyne of each region reproduces irregularly, and waste produced by the nesting process is used exclusively by the soil microbes to form massive colonies below the surface. Biochemical analysis of subsurface bacterial colonies reveals near total collapse caused by the gases released by the mining processes. Killing apex predators devastates a local colony temporarily, but they can rebound. The chemicals released from the mines, however, are 95% responsible for the collapse of the ecosystem. My full report, including data, methodology, and analysis, will be sent directly to the main office. In a later entry titled My Resignation, Hoxson states, due to witnessing numerous ethics violations at Hephaestus, I quit. This is my 180th report about the severity of the situation. What Hephaestus is doing in these mines will cause the biome to become unstable in the short term, and it will ruin our environment permanently in the long run. Read my studies if this is unclear. If anyone reads this at all, what a waste. The truth of the matter was, despite the efforts of both Helgi and Irvin, they lost everything. Even in death, Irvin's reputation was tarnished by the lies of Hephaestus, who painted him as a biologist bent on destroying the entire planetary environment. It's not really a happy ending either, as Ellie Yankton advises that the lawsuit to clear Irvin's name will still be caught up in the bureaucratic red tape and the financial grip of Hephaestus. Truth takes a long time to travel, compared to lies, especially lies that have been circulating for 2 decades now. And while the truth has put Barrett and his memory of his loving husband at peace, it is a warning of the potential things to come for the forgotten city of Gagarin Landing. Given the corrupt yet encompassing influence of Hephaestus' mining company, which managed to leak into courts, government, and the underworld, alongside the extraordinary effort to even confront a large corporation in the court of law, it is worrying that 3 large companies are now vying to invest into Gagarin Landing for expected equity gains. Arkmite, an industrial manufacturer, alongside Centauri Mills, which is the maker of foods such as Chocolate Labs, which lets us know that dogs are extinct in the universe of Starfield, have renovated the old mech factories to create their own products to export from Gagarin to the rest of the settled systems. Industrial and mining equipment, along with a supply of food, are a huge deal in the settled systems, perhaps even more so than the supply of Aurora and Neon. And that city, which plays host to major corporations including Ryujin Industries, Stroud Eklund, Keltcorp, and more, is a seat of power in the Freestar Collective. The corporate espionage and politics of the companies, while not as decadent as Neon's, are still beginning to show in Gagarin Landing, when we help Helena Strickland with a mysterious chain of events, during which significant data from Reliant Medical is assumed to have been stolen by young executive Bonifac Maximov, the death of an innocent courier, how we can decide to frame Bonifac or bring the real culprit Maldonado to justice, and how Helena Strickland nonchalantly reacts to all of it is, well, very Neon-like and quite concerning. It does seem like Gagarin Landing may eventually become the United Colonies version of Neon, in which corporations can make it their own playground with free reign. The roots of an underground world with Lizzie and the others could also prove to be a foundation for such a playground, as we explored with the gangs of Neon in another lore video. In the end, it may be up to the United Colonies government en masse to determine the ultimate fate of Gagarin, assuming Irvin's case makes a difference in how they determine the sovereignty of the small settlement in the capital star system. The political system of the United Colonies is, after all, very different from the feudal-like system of the Freestar Collective and its Council of Governors. Again, this is probably the last Starfield lore video we'll be doing until the Shattered Space DLC comes out in 2024. Thank you all so much for a wonderful 2023, and definitely subscribe to the channel if you want to keep up with all that is lore and even IRL content. We're so close to 40,000, and we couldn't have made it this far without any of you. Until next time, stay safe and have fun.